And a big aloha to you. This is the Travel Angel Radio Show at its new time here on Wednesday. And Kathy Takushi here with me is my co-host with Captivating Journeys. Aloha, Kathy.
Hi, Cindy. How are you?
I am fine, and we are very honored to have Audrey here. Audrey does the Portuguese show on 1240 a.m. on KEWE 8 to 9 on Sundays. And she is also one of the major forces behind the Heritage Hall in Paia. And she's taking time off from there right now to be here and very involved in the Portuguese community. So we'll be talking to you as well. Of course, what are we going to talk about? Portugal.
Yes, yes.
You are an expert. I learned so much last time. A couple of years ago, I spoke to you about it, and I learned so much about Portugal from you. You're wonderful about it. You really know your stuff.
But you did make a trip there, did you not?
Yes, but it wasn't long enough.
That's
why,
what everybody says.
That's why we're going back.
Yeah, somebody told me today, I'm not going to go back for 10 days. I want to go for 6 weeks.
That's I can definitely see that.
Yeah. It takes you pretty much that long to feel that you're part of it.
Well, you are part of it.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there a few times. That I have.
Well, we were all just talking before the show began about this rather controversial subject. Of course, number one, there's been a lot of delays. Again, there was a major storms on the East Coast, and lots of flights canceled. Once again, this weather this season, this winter has been terrible for the East Coast and for flights and cancellations, etc. And I was talking to you, Kathy, last week about the fact that it's best if you're taking a trip to Europe or some other place not to go through Newark or JFK at this time, or even Dulles. Some people swear just don't even go to Dulles anymore and try to book around it. So because it's terrible when you're stuck in the...
That leaves you only Logan, doesn't it?
Logan's even difficult, been hit by storms as well.
It's the target of this next one, Boston.
Yeah. And it's a big issue. So what do you do when people want to go to Europe at this time of year, and where do you direct them to?
Well, for my clients, I usually try to have them go to L.A. or San Fran, and then from San Fran to wherever.
Over the pole? Yeah.
Depending on where they're going to, there are some nonstops.
Because even at this time of year, Chicago can be iffy sometimes.
And Denver.
Yeah.
I know when, like United, Houston is a hub for them, and I like the Houston airport. The people are nice. It's a nice airport. Then I did that one time, and then I had weather in Houston.
Really? They've had some
and it was a summer, so you never know. But I think it's best if you can go from the West Coast straight to somewhere in Europe and then connect, because there's a lot of nonstop flights.
And I also recommend that people get travel insurance.
Yes.
We've had this come up a few times with people saying, well, gosh, I missed this day or that. Some people, if they're on a cruise and they don't give themselves enough time, they can miss half the cruise by the time they get where they're going.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
That's happened.
I know. It's like, wait a second. The ship has left the harbor 2 days ago. You're going to have to fly to get into the next port to meet them there, right? And get your luggage and do all that. So of course, they can call you anytime, day or night, in the middle of the night, and get help if the plane gets delayed or canceled. It's nice to have a travel agent who you can call on at 244-1414 to take care of the stuff you can't deal with. And, meltdowns of people in airports aren't great. And the other meltdown happened, which got all over the news, was about someone who had a large bag, I think flying United.
It was United.
And
right?
the bag was sticking out into the aisle, and then the airline personnel said, listen, you can't leave that sticking out. You have to put it overhead. Well, there's a question. I wonder, okay, she puts it overhead. It turns out there's a dog.
A puppy.
A puppy in the bag. And I guess she must not have said anything. I mean, obviously she probably was worried that she'd get kicked off the flight, right? If she didn't have permission to bring the dog, because it's getting harder and harder. Oh my gosh, we got a picture of the puppy. Is this a dead puppy in the overhead bin?
Well, I don't think he was in the overhead then, but...
Oh, my gosh.
Isn't that sad?
Oh, okay. When you see that, she showed me the Facebook. The dog died. The dog died, and I don't know how long the dog was up there before she realized the dog had died. If it was the whole flight, I think the owner takes some responsibility for having to say something. And you said that you heard the same story, and some people said they even heard the dog yelping or barking.
It was reported, and I'm trying to think of where I read it, that other passengers had heard the dog barking from the overhead bin.
Well, it's just wrong.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. You know, I have to say what's happened is a lot of these flights have really cracked down on the comfort animals. I mean, at one point, I think the thing that kind of broke the camel's back, no pun intended, was when someone said a peacock was their comfort pet and wanted to take a peacock on board. And some people were saying pigs were their comfort animal, and pigs were getting loose and running up and down and pooping. And so it was, I have to say, from the airline's point of view, I think these comfort animals got a little out of control. And I also have had problems, actually, with United when I thought I had actually booked a space for my parrot when he was coming over years ago. And then when I got there and they said, no, there's no space. You have to put the animal down in cargo, which you don't want to do. I mean, you know, you don't want, and parrots are very sensitive. I got my parrot, thank God my parrot didn't die. I had to put the parrot in cargo. But
well, now they don't allow birds in the cabin because of Asian flu.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Birds are no longer allowed in the passenger cabin.
Well, and it's always limited anyway, too. They limit you. I thought I'd actually had a ticket and I'd called ahead of time, and I didn't realize until I got to the airport and it was too late to do anything that they said, no, I couldn't have my pet in the passenger section. Now, it's always a problem with that, but I think, you know, this is obviously with this incident going to be coming up. You have a responsibility as a pet owner to say something. I think even if you're going to get kicked off an airplane.
Well, I would rather get kicked
off
off
and
with
have
a live pet
right.
than to arrive at my destination
right.
only to have my pet die.
Yeah, I mean, and it might come to a lawsuit, and I would imagine maybe it'll be interesting to see if they just settle or say it's not our fault because we didn't know it was a pet that was being put in the overhead.
How could they not know if the dog was barking?
Yeah.
Other passengers heard it.
But then the owner would have had to have known too.
Well, yes. The owner would have had to have known.
So why wouldn't the owner take it down at that point if they were already in the air when the pet was barking?
Just put the well, it's supposed to fit underneath the seat. But United did acknowledge that it was their fault.
Oh, they did?
It was on the news this morning.
I didn't hear that part of the story.
Responsibility
for it.
Wow. Well, then that's interesting. What do you do in the case of a death? Well, it's getting to the point now. It's almost something all the time now that we have social media. These things, and when a picture of a dead pet comes out on Facebook, that certainly is going to get attention. Unfortunately, it's a sad state of affairs, and part of this is, and of course, we have a pet show with Warren Eckstein here. In fact, I've had him on the air talking about pets traveling, and it is a difficult thing for pets. Anyway, traveling, when you have a pet traveling, they go through much more than we go through. Their ears are sensitive. They hear the noise louder. They need water because it gets dehydrated, so they need extra water. What are you going to do if the pet needs to pee or go to the bathroom? You know, it's a big issue. Although I notice now at Hawaiian Airlines they do have a little pet. I think it's here or is it on Oahu where they have a pet relaxation or comfort station
at the airport?
At the airport,
a lot of the airlines I've noticed have that too.
Yeah. But 5 hours later or 6 hours later, right? I mean, what are you going to do? So it's a sad state, and I guess it's going to be coming up more and more about what you do with pets. I think I may have Warren Eckstein on our show again. Now, what's happening with travel? Your news, you're going to Silver Seas is going to be visiting Oahu, right?
The reps, not the ship.
Right.
So we are going to, Tina and I are going to go to a breakfast training tomorrow on Oahu. Mm-hmm. And then we're also going to be sighting some of the new properties that we haven't seen, like the Alohilani, the Lalo.
I don't even know that one.
Check out the Surf Jack. And so we're going to spend the whole day there. And then I have another meeting on Friday. So
I haven't heard a word about Southwest Airlines. I mean, I'd heard from the former shows, and originally when Southwest said they're going to be coming in around March, and I haven't heard or seen a
haven't heard
thing. Have
anything.
you?
Mm-mm. We haven't gotten any.
I wonder if
type
they're
of
being
official.
blocked or if something's going on with that, because it should have been on by now because they were supposed to start flying. So I'm kind of wondering what happened. I mean, I would see that as a big, if I was Hawaiian Airlines, and I'm sure they've been thinking about it because they thought, gosh, Southwest, some people are saying it would be cheaper to fly than Hawaiian Airlines. But I would have thought if they really are starting up here in March, which originally they said, that we would be seeing something about that or hearing something about that by now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I've seen some pretty good fares out there right now. So
On Hawaiian?
on everybody. Mm-hmm. I just happened to be checking for fares for a client to Denver. It wasn't available, so you'd have to play with dates. But there was a fare for like $350 Maui to Denver.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I saw some flights to Europe from the mainland that were like $5.95.
There is, yeah. I have somebody going San Francisco, London for $5.72 round trip.
That's amazing.
Pretty darn cheap.
That really is. Of course,
Yeah.
London, you go anywhere in London. Try staying at a hotel for less than $350.
They had
London's
it to
expensive.
other spots too. Paris, I think Rome was a little bit higher. So if you're it was hard to get.
Well, that's good to know, though,
Yeah.
because this isn't that bad a time of year. I don't mind winter, and spring in Paris, of course, is fabulous. So if you could get this, and I've done the April in Paris thing, so, and it's nice. April in Paris is beautiful, and you can sing that song, April in Paris, right, and do that whole thing. So if you're interested, call Kathy at 244-1414. You can also call Kathy or Tina about this trip we're going to be talking about here for the next hour on to sunny Portugal. And again, Audrey is so in depth. I mean, I assume you have Portuguese background and your roots are from Portugal, right?
Both of my parents were born on the island of Madeira.
Oh, wow.
They came as children to Hawaii with their parents.
Wow.
My dad in 1886 and my mother in 1906.
That must have been amazing. Do you know what brought them to Hawaii?
Yes, the opportunity to work.
Aha. We had Henry Lindsay, who's got Portuguese roots, on last week. And it was interesting. He said something I wasn't aware of. He said there's parts of Portugal and Madeira that look a lot like Maui.
There is a spot as you're going into Iao Valley, and if you take a picture of it, people from Madeira will say, "Oh, that's a Ribeira Fria," and you say, "No, this is on Maui."
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep, there are many similarities. Many similarities.
When did you first get to visit your roots, your
My
homeland?
first trip to Portugal was in 1979.
Wow.
And I went in December with a friend, and it was cold, but it was not freezing cold as it is on the East Coast right now.
Right.
But it was beautiful. It was the holidays, and I went to midnight mass in the main cathedral there in Lisbon, and the cardinal was celebrating mass. And unfortunately, what I remember of it, this poor lost a dog wandered into the church, and one of the dogs that had come with its owner turned on it. So here we have the two dogs barking at each other.
Oh my gosh!
And
Is it Christmas Eve Mass?
It was midnight mass.
Was that the main church that's down towards the river?
Yes,
that's
and there's
a
a
beautiful
little tram
church.
that goes by it. They have a museum of tiles that is, part of it. It startled me because I don't think I've ever recalled dogs going to church.
No, it's interesting.
Except on the Feast of St. Francis when they go to
By the
get blessed.
blessings, yeah.
But it was interesting. The choir was magnificent. I mean, it was really beautiful. That was, and then on Christmas Day we went to Fatima.
Oh, how wonderful.
And after that, we had lunch in Nazaré, where, it's a fishing village, and the fish practically jump into your plate. And I recall that as we were having lunch, very sedate Portuguese family, we had a group of Americans that came into the same restaurant, and they were boisterous and loud and obviously very drunk. And I thought, I don't want anybody to know.
No, I know. It's kind of the ugly American syndrome.
But it was a beautiful, beautiful visit. And then we were there over New Year's where everybody makes noise, and you have to eat either 12 grapes or 12 raisins to bring in the new year. But let's talk about this.
I didn't know that tradition. Isn't that interesting?
It's Portugal has so many novel things about it, and
is that because it's because of the grapes being honored by the fact that there's so many vineyards there?
No, they say that you eat 12, one for each month of the year, so that it will be good luck, etc.
Oh, that's good.
But just the eating was good.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we are going to talk about the trip to sunny Portugal happening October 4th through the 14th. With an optional 4-night Madeira Island post-tour extension, which was just lowered in the cost of doing that one. And it's I just so respect you. I'm going to go through this and have your input on it. But the cost, including the air from Maui flying over to Lisbon, is $3,999 based on double occupancy. Mm-hmm. That's a single based on double occupancy. Although we have had people call and say they were interested in going by themselves, and single, it's possible you can go by yourself.
Slightly more. I think it's $42.99.
Yeah,
which isn't
for a
that
single.
much.
Yeah, which is good.
That much difference. But the idea is, of course, there's a lot of sides. A lot of people, just like when we were there, a lot of people now are doing tours or cruises, but they only get you there for a day. And I know Kathy did a river cruise. Last October, it was November, October, I believe.
October, we went on the Douro River.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which was
from Spain into Portugal?
We started in Portugal. Went up and then came back. But we did go into Santiago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because as Kathy was saying earlier, we were talking about it, and she says it's become a very popular place to go. But if you're just going for a day on a cruise, that's really not enough.
No, not really. And that's true for any country you would visit, certainly for Portugal, but for almost any country you would visit, one day is not enough.
Mm-hmm. And that's why this is going to be longer. It's leaves here, goes to Lisbon, and then you know about these places so much more than I do. We're going to go into the beautiful Portuguese Riviera area, and that's Estoril
and Cascais.
Cascais.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about those areas from your experience.
Well, they're where you would want people to go. They're the resort areas, mm-hmm. and there is a wonderful casino there. It's and you have to dress for it. You don't. It's not like going into Las Vegas where you can go in slippers and shorts, etc. There, you dress formally to go to the casino, and it's very, very nice, very elegant. But it's a beautiful area. The thing that is perhaps deceptive about it is that in Estoril you have the feeling that you're in a charming town, mm-hmm. small town, but it's not that small, and they've got a castle there, a beautiful palace there in Estoril. So that's one of the things that you get to
I'm
visit.
corrected already because I called it Estros. The S again pronounced S-H. Estoril.
Yeah,
Estoril.
Portuguese have that sh sound in their language.
And it does say that, that this was actually a place that the royals actually came and went to. So that's why the palace, etc. And we'll have a welcome dinner that night on our first day. And then, we're going to talk a little bit here because we go into Lisbon to the Alfama district, and it's a fascinating area that if you haven't been to Portugal before, and I know a lot of people have gone to Italy many times, have gone to Spain's become very, very popular, and of course have gone to Paris, who are regular travelers. But this area is unique, and it has a little bit of everything. I see the wrought iron. I see so much in Spain. When you go to Barcelona, wrought iron everywhere. And in some areas of Paris, you get that wrought iron. You get the different colors on the buildings.
You do.
Like you get.
And
the small cobblestone.
If you wander through the little twisted lanes, you can't get a car through there, so you really have to be able to walk it. In the Alfama district is unusual because it's so old. It goes back, to the 1100s. And it is an area that survived the great earthquake in 1755 that killed 80,000 people in Portugal.
Mm-hmm. It was huge,
And the
huh?
Alfama was virtually untouched by it. So the buildings there that are very close together, and you see laundry hanging, and you do see wrought iron, but it's mainly the cobblestone lanes that you're going through, and they wind. Lisbon is not flat. So you have to be able to walk and to climb.
Mm-hmm.
And very, very pretty. So the Alfama, I'm glad, is included in there.
And also, there's that Geronimo's Monastery.
Geronimo's
Monastery.
Geronimo's is important. Geronimo's is the site where Vasco da Gama is entombed at Geronimo's.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, and across the hallway is...
That's up on the peak looking the city,
No.
is it? No, I was thinking the other church.
Yeah, Geronimo's is actually in Lisbon itself. It's in a part of Lisbon that is part of Belém, which in English translates to Bethlehem, but they have pastéis, right? Pastéis de Belém.
Famous.
They're very famous. They're little custard tarts that originally were made by the nuns. And anyway, Geronimo's is one of my favorite places. Across the hallway from Vasco da Gama's sepulcher is a tomb that we believe to have the remains of Portugal's poet laureate, Luís Vaz de Camões. And he was a distant relative to Vasco da Gama. His major work, Os Lusíadas, is an allegorical treatise really on the voyage of discovery that Vasco da Gama made. So much for that. What is interesting, if you don't know it, you walk through it and you see this cloister with a grassy lawn and 4 corridors, and there are arches. But look carefully at each arch, because every arch is carved differently. So when you look at it at first glance, it's uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at it and you see that each one is an individual carving.
I think I did go there. Now I'm recalling that. Yeah.
I remember telling John
Yes.
about that.
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very
and it's like the
interesting.
Portuguese people. At first glance, we're all alike, and then you look at us and we're quite individual. So,
How large is the Portuguese community here on Maui, would you say?
I would venture to guess that on this island, you have probably 25,000 people who are of Portuguese descent, in whole or in part.
I'm surprised. I did not realize.
Well, because
that's-
Portuguese marry everybody. No, I mean, this is true. They love everybody. So,
that's great. That's fun. Do you have Portuguese celebrations in your hall, the Heritage Hall? Do you have certain
we do.
celebrations?
We have every year. We have our annual festa, and for that we have Portuguese foods for sale. We have. We always do a cuisine demonstration, and I think last year we did torresmos, which is a dish from the Azores. It's pork that has been marinated and then fried, and it's quite good. We also have a bread making demonstration every year. And now that we have our stone oven, we're actually doing bread making in a stone oven. We do a workshop for children, for families that have children. The children have to be 8 to 12, but that's a different...
And that's making bread. What's the Portuguese bread like compared to regular? But what kind of flavor?
Well, in Portugal, you get your bread that what we call pãozinhos. They're little loaves of bread.
Uh-huh.
And for breakfast, you slap some cheese on it, or some Portuguese sausage. And they're very large. There's the size of our bologna, and you slap that on the bread, and you have your coffee, and that's breakfast with fruit.
And
Very continental.
What about the Portuguese bean soup?
Okay. Portuguese bean soup per se, you would not find in the fine restaurants in Lisbon. You might find it in Madeira and in the Azores. And that's because it's basically peasant food it's a food that the common people, you grew your vegetables, you grew your beans, you raised your pigs, you made sausage, you made ham from what you raised. Well, today, it's we don't raise pigs in our backyard. We're not allowed to. And, you don't normally have gardens here where you grow everything. Some people do, but it's not the common practice. So when you get Portuguese soup, the difference here in the Azores is that they will take some of the soup and they'll puree it, and then they'll put it back into the pot to mix with the rest of it. So it's a thicker
soup.
It's a thicker soup, very hearty.
I know up at the Holy Ghost Church every year when they have their feast, they always and some of the places, I think even St. Joseph have Portuguese soup contests,
definitely,
right?
Definitely,
It's kind of a huge part.
Yeah, it's part of our heritage here in Hawaii. It's not part of the culture in Lisbon or even in Madeira or the Azores.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. But it's, again, one of those things that developed here kind of as a remembrance in their mind of the family.
What our families brought. And here, when they got here, they all had gardens. They grew everything, including their animals. So.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Well, okay, so I'm learning so much from you. We're talking, if just tuning in, with Audrey. Audrey has the Portuguese show at 12:40, runs on our sister station, 12:40 a.m., 8 to 9 o'clock on Sunday nights, and she works with the Portuguese community. And you've been there probably, how many times have you been to Portugal?
I was trying to think. I think 7 times.
Wow.
But not all of them to the islands. The first time I went to Madeira was in 93. And to the Azores, I think in 96, 97, somewhere through there. But then I've been back many, many times
Have you been seeing the growth of the tourism, the changes coming? Because obviously there's a lot of money that can come in through tourism.
And to Madeira. Madeira has always been a tourist place.
It has
the
been.
Azores has been trying to increase their tourism. And I said, be careful of what you wish for.
Oh, it's true.
Be careful of what you wish for. Unless you're planning well, you may find yourself doing something that in the end will not benefit you. But the Azores has a long way to go. And it's certainly the island of San Miguel is the most beautiful island I have ever seen.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It is absolutely beautiful.
Wow, that's good to know.
It's green. It's got lakes. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And very very rural. Their main industry is cattle. They raise. It's a dairy industry, and it's interesting if you're driving on the roads, and it gets to evening time, and all of a sudden you stop because there's a herd of cattle that are quietly walking home. They know it's time to be milked, and they have the right of way. So you stop and you wait.
I've been on the backside behind Kahakaloa and had that happen a few times. Right? Where that's gone on. Well, we're going to move on to Sintra, which is kind of famous.
Oh, yes. Sintra has a palace, and the last ruling monarch was there. It's interesting because his wife and his mistress both had the same name, and his mistress lived on the palace grounds.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yes. Great lovers, Portuguese.
He left that name. That's it. You call out the name and you don't know who's going to answer.
It's a beautiful palace. It really and truly is.
You went there, right?
Yeah, we did. I liked all the colors.
Yeah.
And I've learned that I pronounced it Kashkaish.
Kashkaish. Yeah.
Kashkaish. And then Estral. And I'm even afraid to pronounce these right. Obidos.
There's an accent for it. Is a pretty little city. It's a walled city. It has a wall around it, and it's got interesting little shops. And what I like about the shops are that they're handmade goods from the people who live there. During the wintertime, they sit around and they make their dolls. They do their crocheting, their embroidery, their knitting. And so they're able to sell handmade goods. It's really artisan shops.
When you see it's a walled city, does that go back to the medieval times?
Right.
Oh,
it has a very beautiful posada in it. It's nationally owned now by the Portuguese government, and it is pricey. To stay there is very, very pricey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
But it's beautiful. It's a castle actually.
And I guess there's also it says the beautiful Silver Coast is a spectacular region filled with sleepy villages and age-old castles. It's funny because a lot of people know Spain as having castles. Of course, Ireland for having castles, and England, but I don't know if people really think of Portugal and castles.
It was interesting because I was looking, I was just going through something that I had read online, and it mentioned a castro, and I thought, Castro? Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out that Castro is a Portuguese, and I think it's also in Spanish, the same word, and it refers to a Roman or pre-Roman castle.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
I thought that was okay. So that was interesting.
And Fatima, that was one of the highlights when I went last year. Fatima was very different than what I expected, but also just as impressive. And when you went there too as well, Kathy, you went to Fatima.
Mm-hmm, we did.
She had a lovely experience. She actually got to go just outside where Fatima is into the old town, and she got to meet the niece
of Lucia. And she was sitting in this little, I guess where her house is, across from where Lucia grew up, and then our guide knew of her, and she took us in, and then she kissed everybody's hand, and it just kind of was a chicken skin moment, and she said something in Portuguese, and we didn't know what, I don't remember.
She's 96 or 97 years?
I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. They just had this last year, the 100th anniversary.
Yes. Yeah.
And I have to say it was very different than what I kind of imagined. I thought it was just going to be a cathedral, but it's actually like a whole center. That it's a very large area.
It has to be because at night you have the candlelight processions, and there are thousands of people there.
And some of them, they walk on their knees.
Yeah, they walk on their knees from the edge of that huge arena that they have all their way up to the basilica itself.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
And they have three. They have the original chapel, the small one, then they have the older one, and then the new one, which is really modern.
And then they have what they added. The first time I went to Fatima was in 1979, and they didn't have the Pope's shelter that they built, this clear plastic, so people could see what was the Mass in action. When he went to Fatima, that came later. What I found impressive were the sanage there. And if you have a problem, say you have a throat problem, you will go in and you will buy a wax figure of a throat, and then you will light it, and you'll put a little donation in to ask for special prayers so that your throat will be healed.
I didn't see that.
No,
there were a lot of people around. I did buy a few of the large candles. They have the foot-long candles and more. But it's very crowded, so people were throwing
things,
because it got really hot. There was a big flame going because it's on the left side as you walk in. There's this whole area where people light the candles and everything, and then a little shop. And it's very inexpensive to get the candles and things there at that shop. But there's another gift shop I went to behind. When you go up and go in back, there's another gift shop that's back behind the new cathedral, which had lovely things. And I did buy a couple of statues of the Madonna there.
Because your book is on Fatima.
It's on the Blessed Mother. It's a Mystical Mother Mary. Yeah. And I did bring I also did a CD called Ave Maria, Queen of Angels. And I gave, because I didn't know who to talk to, because it's kind of, there's people everywhere, right? But they did have the nuns working the gift shop. But I did give the nuns, and I didn't speak language. So someone who did was translated to one of the nuns I gave it to, and I gave them a couple of them, and they were very grateful. But I wanted to give them to them, but it's kind of hard to know when you're there which is the right place. But, I mean, the new cathedral's very large, and it has a big organ and the sound's going. But I love the area behind the cathedral where you could still see the old trees were still sitting there, and there's a little bench you can sit circling the old trees.
The old trees is where the Blessed Mother appeared over a little oak tree when it was growing. Yeah.
And the original trees were pretty much all torn down by people who were pilgrims. Unfortunately, they have just a little sliver left of the original tree. But I went in back knowing that story about the trees, and those are old trees. And I when I was sitting there praying, I definitely felt the sun was coming through the light, the wind stirred, and I felt that presence, and it was very, very beautiful. I did go inside and pray in the church, but I felt more of the presence outside under the tree than I did inside.
Well, when I was there, it was on Christmas, and we got there about 11 o'clock in the morning, and all around there were these signs saying "Silencio," silence. And the huge square in front of it's not a square, it's really a rounded arena, was basically empty. Everyone was inside at Mass. And Mass is going on, as you know, in all different languages, throughout the day. So it was I thought it was, you could feel that something profound took place there. You didn't know what it was.
Yes.
But you have the same feeling when you go to Kalaupapa, that something profound happened here, even though you may not know what.
I call it the presence. You feel the presence, that spirit. And that's why I'm sure people do go there and probably go there a few times to go back. I never made it down as you enter off to the right. I think there was a museum or something off to the right, and I didn't ever make it down there because that was actually quite a ways from where the church is on the top.
And, they don't think anything about walking 12 blocks to go somewhere. I mean, here we want transportation. So.
Well, there's also a time limit, and coming up, we'll try to make that so it's not a problem because it's a memorable. I mean, you remembered it from your trip. I remember it. You remember that trip, and I think that is what makes trips very, very special, is those places you go where you get that feeling and you remember it later, and that's what makes a trip very special. If you're just tuning in, it's the Travel Angel radio show. We're talking about a trip to Portugal that we're doing October 4th through the 14th. And there is, and I didn't mention this enough, there's a limitation of when the deal is available till $3,999 is being held for us at that price, including your airfare and your breakfast and some dinners and all of your tours and 4-star hotels. That's all included, but we only have that available to the end of March. So I know some people have called you, Kathy, but, they may not be aware that, they've been thinking about it. But if you're thinking about it, go ahead and call Kathy and go ahead and put the deposit down, and you can still think about it up till the end of March. You can go get your money back, I think, through April.
The deposit is fully refundable up until April 2nd, and the deposit is $500 per person.
And I think you'll be very glad that you had this experience. It's very different. Portugal is not like the other cities of Europe. It's got its own distinct flavor. And I think partly because it hasn't had too much tourism to kind of water it down yet. I mean, it's still like a discovery. It's a beautiful gem to be discovered.
But it's the new hot spot, so.
It is.
Yeah, it's going to get really crowded, I think.
We're going to talk about Alentejo. We talked a little bit before. Alentejo. You pronounce the J.
Yes,
yeah, Alentejo. And the stop in Évora, it's a UNESCO city, the museum city of Portugal, because it's a medieval walled city that lies a 2nd century Roman temple to Diana there.
The Roman ruins. Yeah, they're throughout Portugal, but in Évora, and I started to tell you that was the first place. One of the most famous dishes, culinary treats, really. Comes from that area, the Alentejo, and it's meijoas de porco alentejana, clams and pork in the style of the Alentejo. And it's an odd combination. It works perfectly well. I mean, it really is a very, very pleasant dish. Another thing was the sopa de lentejo, which I was expecting this wonderful soup because Portugal is known for it. And when it came, I said, we have this in Hawaii, but that's not what we call it. It's a soup that is made with water and olive oil and an egg over a piece of bread. And you boil garlic in the olive oil and water. And after it's boiled, you poach your egg in it, and then you spoon the whole thing over a crust of dry bread. And, I said, oh, my goodness. So it was something that we recognized.
Yeah. That did you have some nice meals there in that area?
Oh, well, first of all, if you like seafood, Portugal's a place to go.
Yeah.
And the seafood, because it's a sea coast, 750 miles long, lots of fresh fish. And Portuguese enjoy it. Interestingly enough, though, what they really like is their codfish, which is semi-dry. Bacalhau. Yes.
You had that, huh?
Yeah.
And of course, we haven't talked about the grapevines and the grape and the port as well.
And I noticed that there are 2 winery tours in this.
Yeah.
I've been to the one of the Fonseca wineries, and it's
they're famous.
Yes, they really are.
Yeah, and here the Fonseca you can get it, but it's rather expensive for good Fonseca. Yeah,
and there it's really wonderful. You do have to be careful if you're going to be sending alcohol back to the United States. There's a duty that you'll pay on it, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
And I once or twice tried to bring back bottles in my carry-on luggage, and you have to be very, very careful of that, unless it is boxed. I've had them break.
Carry on?
No.
Oh, your
no,
check-in.
my check-in.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yes.
So you
Can
wrap your clothes around it.
And now tell me a little bit about Lagos.
Lagos is on the coast, and this is where Henry the Navigator would actually send his ships on their voyages of discovery. And
he's a hero there, isn't he? He's like a huge hero.
There's a Villa do Infante, which is the home of the prince's home. Lagos is close to Sagres, and everybody says he formed a school of navigation. It wasn't exactly a school, although that's one way you could term it. What he did was to gather the best cartographers in Europe from all over. If they could draw a map, he wanted them to come to Sagres.
Really?
So that when they went out, they would be able to map the places that they had visited.
Aha.
And people say, well, it's a school of navigation. Well, yes and no.
But it's also the place where all these historical maps
Exactly.
Wow, what a wonderful thing to be able to see, because at that time it's interesting to see what they thought and what became real and the old names and what was done at that time, which is really an important time.
It was really a very adventurous time period, because you were sailing off to places that had not yet been discovered.
Yeah.
So.
And there's a lot of Moorish influences still as well there, right?
Yeah,
because this was where they would come in from the ocean. And
well, again, Portuguese, like Spanish, the words beginning with AL are directly attributed to the years that the Moors were there. And the Moors are your Arabs there.
Yeah.
So
and the architecture there.
The architecture, the tiles, etc. Those are all part of the Moorish heritage in Portugal.
So they have beautiful tiles.
Oh,
yeah.
All over.
There's one chapel that you have on Faro. We aren't at Faro. There's in Lagos. There's the Igreja de Santo Antonio, which is a Baroque church, and it is believed to be the birth site of Saint Anthony of Lisbon and of Padua. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But Lisbon also claims to be his birthplace. However, at this particular church in Lagos, there is a statue of the Blessed Mother, and she is pregnant. And women go there to pray to St. Anthony and to the Virgin to be able to have children.
Wow, and that's unusual.
Yeah. I mean, I was startled.
Yeah.
I was, really? So... Yeah.
And we were just talking about, which I learned from you, the towns beginning with A. So I imagine Algarve is, again, got the Moorish influence. It's also got oleanders, figs, almonds, which is you think of in Spain more, right?
But the almonds are a bit of a legend. One of the Portuguese kings married a girl who was from a northern climate. And she missed the winter times. She missed seeing snow in the mountains. And she really, really was homesick for the climate. The Alentejo is warm. It's where the beaches are. It's where Portuguese go for vacations. So the king, very wisely, wanted to do something to make her feel more comfortable. And he had an idea, and he summoned thousands of gardeners. And as the months went by, she grew very, very weak, very tired. She really was homesick. And finally, one morning, he woke her up, and he carried her over to the window. And when she looked out, the mountains were covered in white because the almond trees were in blossom.
Oh, how beautiful. What a great story.
And they grow almonds. They're beautiful almonds and oranges. The best oranges come from the Algarve.
And so those are wonderful things you can buy as a souvenir and bring back as gifts. And almonds have become expensive.
Yeah. And olive oil, too.
Portuguese olive oil is really, really good.
You don't think about Portugal.
They don't export their olive oil. And I'm not sure they do. You can buy it, but it's not like you can walk into almost any Costco, for example, and get olive oil from Italy. But you don't find it from Portugal because it's sold in smaller amounts. It's
and cork. We haven't talked, but did you bring your cork purse? When Kathy was there, she and I didn't know that. I mean, I remember driving to Fatima and there were all these cork trees, but I didn't know you could get a cork purse, and it's beautiful.
Cork anything.
And Portugal is the world's leading producer of cork.
And it's quite an amazing art. And I learned so much just even from driving through the area.
And you have to know exactly how to cut it so you don't kill the tree, just to take the bark itself.
But you have to watch the different, because there's a lot of fake cork from China.
Is there?
On the little street vendors, that are really cheap. So
beware.
Yeah.
Beware.
Well, you'll get to visit a cork factory and again, Algarve and Ajeteo again starts with an A.
The Alentejo, they say, is the breadbasket of Portugal because it's farmland. They grow wheat. They grow everything in the Alentejo, olives.
Oh, that's the olives and everything, too. So then what we've done is, because it's very important, we've learned that how important Madeira is to the Maui community and those with Portuguese heritage. We've had the extension. But I do, before we go to that extension to Madeira, I want to talk about fado music because it's such a unique thing. And I've seen a couple shows, and you actually recorded some fado music that was done there. And it's not like any kind of music you've heard. It's kind of timeless. It feels very ancient, like you'd be hearing that some other time and space, right?
They say that fado is the soul song of Portugal, and the word fado comes from the word. It comes from fate. It means fate. And the Portuguese sing of their fate, and it's usually sad. It's usually very, very emotional. Human emotions: jealousy, anger, hatred, envy. And deep romance. So, fado, the origins of it are not as clearly defined as many people think that it comes from Africa, probably from Cabo Verde, the islands, where they do a style of singing called the morna. Others say it comes from Brazil. I I would think that Father went to Brazil. I don't think it came from Brazil to Portugal, but I think that it may trace its origins to Africa. That I can believe.
Do you hear more of it in the southern area of Portugal because it's closer to the...
No, not necessarily.
It's all over, I think.
It's all over in Coimbra, which is up further north. Lisbon, all through Portugal.
It's interesting, too, because I didn't know about it before. And I follow
there's
music.
differences between, like, the one in Lisbon
and the one in Coimbra. Coimbra
Island.
is generally a slower-paced fado.
I liked that one better.
I did.
Yeah.
There are a couple of real classics among fado performers.
Well, you're so fascinating. We only have 3 minutes left. This hour has just flown by, but we don't want to finish without mentioning that you can do the extension for $12.95. I think it's $12.95 extra.
Yeah.
And that includes 5 days, 4 nights going to Câmara de Lobos.
Câmara de Lobos.
And
there are no wolves on the island, but
No.
it's the sound of the wind coming through the mountains that sounds like howling. That's how it got its name.
And the beautiful Rebrero Frio? I slaughtered that.
That's where you think you're on. You're actually in Yao Valley.
Is that the one?
They have a fishery there. They grow fish in Ribeira Frio.
Ribeiro Frio.
The extension is 1249.
1249.
Oh, even
And
better.
Santana. Now, I don't think that's related to Carlos.
No, it's actually the houses in Santana are what are distinctive. They're triangular with thatch roof,
Wow.
painted white with red, with blue and red trim on them.
Wow. But call Kathy because, again, we've been talking about this for a few weeks, but time is limited. I know you've told me, and you're so right, really, Audrey, that a lot of people don't make decisions till late, but in this particular case, we need to. We've only booked it for X amount of time, so we
And then
ask
we'll
for
have
you.
to let the space go, so
Yeah.
you don't want to miss out.
Yeah, so you need to call 244-1414, and you don't have to talk to Kathy. If Tina's there, you can talk to Tina as well, and you can always leave a message. But you can see the whole thing online if you go to captivatingjourneys.com.
Go to our website, and there's a link to the tour and the pricing and the detailed itinerary.
Which is very good. And you can see pictures, which is nice. A lot of us like to look at pictures.
Yes.
to see what we're talking about. Because this is really a journey of a lifetime. And for some of you, it may be a return trip. For some of you, it may be the first time. But this way you get familiar and you can always go back again. And that's what I do, right? You get a taste of what it's about. And you can always contact lovely Audrey with the Portugal Heritage and the Heritage Hall. She's often down there in down in Paia.
Right.
And there's a wonderful community there as well. So I have to thank you, really. You can listen. Also, you have wonderful music you play from Portugal on your show.
And a lot of it
Sunday
is
nights.
father music.
Oh, is it? Oh, wonderful.
Yep.
And that's on Sundays, and you can hear it from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock on 1240 a.m. And again, a big mahalo to you. I learned I learned so much from you. I really do.
I do too. Yeah.
You're an expert on this. And Kathy, we'll see you. You'll be going to Egypt soon.
On April 12th. Pretty
So
soon.
yeah, good. We'll talk more
Still
about
one
that.
cabin left if anybody's adventurous.
I want to go, but it's going to
We're
be
going to Mount Sinai.
Oh, wonderful.
That's going to be.
and some lovely, lovely hotels and spaces on a very exclusive tour of Egypt with Andrea Smith. Well, and you can call Kathy at 244-1414. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for listening to the Travel Angel Radio Show. We'll be back next week. Aloha.
That was good.
Thank you. It's Takushi. Are you from Maui originally?
No, I'm Oahu, but my husband is from, his family is.